Happy Maroon Friday, everybody. I want to say a word of thank you to everyone that when you're scrolling through your Facebook or Instagram, that you have stopped and taken the time to watch and listen to these videos. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I don't do these simply to try to promote myself, but I just am trying to, especially during this coronavirus pandemic, to try to connect people with God in ways that normally maybe they wouldn't be connected, and look at the scriptures in a new light, in a different way. And I think that's one of the things that God has called me to do, is to try to help people see things uh, in, in a different light, in a new way from the scriptures. And so, having said that, I haven't been able to stop thinking about our Wednesday nights together in talking about the book of Revelation. And so we talked about Wednesday night, the seven churches in the book of Revelation. And the final church, the last church, is probably the one that we're most familiar with, because it's the one that many preachers preach on at revivals and times like that. And it's the church at Laodicea. It's the lukewarm church. And I haven't been able to stop thinking about that because because when I was reading that, it dawned on me. Something dawned on me for the first time. Is that one of the most famous, well-known sayings of Jesus from the book of Revelation is found in verse 20 of chapter 3, where Jesus says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and dine with him and he with me." Now, we have applied that to unbelievers. We have used that verse in evangelism and say that Jesus is standing outside of a believer's life, and he's not of an unbeliever's life, and he's knocking on the door, wanting us to open the door of our hearts and invite Jesus in. And that's not a bad interpretation. I'm not saying we got that part wrong, but here's something else that it dawned on me this week, is that Jesus is speaking not to unbelievers, but he's speaking to believers. Now, granted, he's speaking to lukewarm Christians. He's speaking to what we might today term backslidden Christians, but he's speaking to believers nonetheless. And then I got to thinking about that word lukewarm. And that is a word, as we saw Wednesday night, that the Laodiceans would not be unfamiliar with, because the city at Laodicea had a water problem. Their problem was there was not a water source nearby. And so they had to get water from outside. And so 10 miles away was the city of Colossae. And that's where cold water was. The cold water that came from the running streams and brooks and from the rocks. But if they piped that water in from 10 miles away, what happened was, as it traveled that 10 miles, it became lukewarm. And the same problem had the opposite problem. And 6 miles away was the city of Hierapolis, and that's where hot springs were. And so if they piped that hot water in, what would happen? In traveling that 6 miles, it would again become lukewarm. And here's what I think I would say to the believer about being lukewarm, is this: the further we get away from the source, we become lukewarm. When that cold water traveled the 10 miles, the further it got away from its source, it went from being cold to being lukewarm. The further the hot water got from its source in Hierapolis, it became lukewarm. And I would say this: the further you and I get from our source, our relationship with Jesus, that's our source, our relationship with God through Jesus Christ, the further we get from our source, we become lukewarm, we become backslidden. And when we get to that point, then Jesus says to us, I am standing at the door of your heart, and I am knocking, and I'm asking to come in again. And if I do, I will come into you, dine with you, and you with me. And what that is relationship. That's relationship. And that's the whole point. You've heard many preachers and teachers say Christianity is not so much a religion as it is a relationship. The further we get away from our source, the further we get away from our relationship with Jesus. And then we become backslidden. We become lukewarm. Let's get back to our source today. May you get back to your source and your relationship with Him. Thank you for watching this video, and I pray that this weekend you will get back and close to your source, your relationship with God through Jesus Christ. He's standing there knocking. Open the door. Let Him in. God bless you, and have a great weekend.